Welcome to another edition of Budget Hunter. This is Zach. I'm going to be talking about the Pronghorn Antelope Drawing coming up on June 2nd. Stay tuned. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the pronghorn zones, the cost, why I'm excited about the pronghorn drawing here in California, and some of the statistics to see which zones might be best to get drawn in. It will be a short video, but I hope it will be helpful. Here's a breakdown of how the drawing works here in California. For elk, pronghorn, and bighorn sheep, you have a preference pool where 75% of the tags are for those highest point holders. Those highest point holders are people who have accumulated 1 point per year to get to wherever they're at now, whether that be 5, 10, 15 points. 75% of the tags are assigned to that highest group who are randomized and then selected. And even if you have the highest number of points available, if there's more highest point holders than there are tags, then there will still be some who don't get a tag. And so there's 75% that goes to them. 25% goes to the remaining point holders and non-point holders who just go into a random drawing. The way it will break down is that if you have one tag available, that would go to just a straight random drawing with no points accounted for. 2 tags give you 1 preference point drawing, 1 random drawing. 3 tags give you 2 preference point drawings and 1 random drawing. And then starting at 4 tags or more, you have a 75%, 25% split. When you're looking at the cost associated with pronghorn hunting here in California, you have $813 for the drawing application, and then if you are drawn for a tag, it would be $162.82 for resident, $22.17 for a resident junior, and then a non-resident is $498.65. These prices are definitely higher than other areas like Wyoming or others for both the resident and the non-resident fee, but for California, when you compare a almost $500 tag for elk or bighorn sheep, it's not too unreasonable for the hunt. So the first thing to cover are the zones in which you can hunt antelope in California. They're all located in northeastern California up against the Oregon-Nevada border. You have Mount Dome, Clear Lake, Likely Tables, Lassen, Big Valley, and Surprise Valley. Now, some of these zones are pretty harsh in their conditions, and it is recommended that you have 4-wheel drive or an ATV available in order to hunt. Some of them, like I found Clear Lake, does have plenty of public land that backs up against paved roads. There still might be a pretty good hike that you have to do in which at least a mountain bike or something would be helpful to get back in there. But some of these zones, like I know some of the recommendations regarding Big Valley and Modoc, and I believe even Surprise Valley as well, is that there's some off-roading that is necessary. And so that's something to look into and do your research in regards to each of these zones. But overall, the big picture here is that there's a very small area of the state in which this hunt happens. They're all bordering up against each other, which means you definitely have the possibility of game getting bumped from one zone to another, depending on where they are. And so you want to be strategic as you try to select which zone you're interested in. I would start with some of the major roads that are up here in the Clear Lake area, and then also out here where you could have to swing out of state and then come back in, to see which areas seem to be the most accessible for scouting trips, and then for you personally, thinking about maybe getting a scouting trip in prior to your hunt. The next thing to look at are the hunts that are available in these zones. Similar to elk and deer, you have apprentice hunts, archery, and then general method hunts. Not every zone has an apprentice hunt available and an archery hunt. The one that doesn't is the Mount Dome. There's no archery hunt there. And then for Mount Dome and Clear Lake, there's no apprentice hunt available. The apprentice hunts are all either sex. The archery are all for buck. And then the general methods are all for buck. The majority of the tags that are available are for the Likely Tables and Lassen area. You can see those have 45 per time period. Something that you'll see about these hunts is that some of these zones only have one hunt period that lasts a week for the entire season. So even though there might be 15 tags available, you can recognize that it'll be you and 15 other guys who are all trying to hunt during the same exact week. The likely tables and the lasso zones do have two different periods available, period 1 and period 2, and they back up against each other. All of the general method hunts do follow the archery season, but the apprentice hunts actually coincide with the general method as far as the time period. And so you could potentially look at, in some of these areas, having 45 hunters that are trying to hunt likely tables at the same time that you have an additional 5 apprentice, making a total of 50 hunters across what is a pretty sizable chunk of land. So you certainly don't have the kind of pressure that you might have with the deer season on opening weekend, but you do know that pretty much everyone is going to be out at the same time. This would, in my mind, prompt me to think, if I'm going to be doing this hunt during my scouting trip, I'm probably going to have a couple areas lined up that I would want to travel to, because the last thing I would want, especially if I don't have off-road access, is to get to a location and see that there's already a good number of people there. With how skittish antelope are for hunting, I would want to be very clear of anyone else who might be bumping those animals, and maybe even try to get on the other side of them in case they do bump them in my direction. Looking at some of the statistics from 2019, you can see that for the general methods hunts, these hunts have a very high success rate. Mountain Dome was at 50%, but you only had 2 tags available. Clear Lake was at 93%. Likely Tables was at 62 and 42 respectively. Last one was at 89 and 91. Big Valley at 60 and Surprise Valley at 90. Now this doesn't come as a surprise to me, but the archery tags really have pretty bad statistics and success rates. You have Clear Lake at 0, Likely Tables at 33, Lassen at 40, Big Valley at 0, and Surprise Valley at 0. The last thing that I want to cover, which is on all of my videos, is if I was a person who was coming in with no points accumulated, or at least not enough to be able to really make any kind of impact on the preference drawing, what is my best chance going into the random drawing to be able to be selected? It's pretty clear, especially since the 2019 hunt statistics have a breakdown between applicants and tags, that the Big Valley zone, there's only one hunt available, that zone had 49 applicants or 50 applicants per tag for the 20 tags that were issued. This might have been last year the best chance that you have. Now, of course, these numbers are very much subject to change, and I could imagine that a good number of people might see this and then apply for this zone. My recommendation here, since there is a lot of similarity in these stats between Clear Lake, Likely Tables, Big Valley, is to really do your research of which zone you would like to get drawn for, and then base it off of that. Since, like I mentioned before, some of the landscapes can be a lot more difficult. There's even an advisory on the wildlife website regarding these hunts, that they can be a lot of exposure, there's not a lot of shade, you're hunting in much more open terrain due to where these animals like to hide, and you have the potential of having to pursue them over miles of terrain, open, with a lot of exposure and need for off-road, for just what goes into all of those. I would recommend highly going into this, just picking whatever zone you want to go for, maybe 1 or 2, and then come and look at the statistics. For me personally, this year I think Clear Lake is the best choice. You have a lot of road accessibility, you have a lot of public land access, there isn't as much of a need for some kind of off-road vehicle, and then statistically you have 15 tags available, which means that you're going to have roughly, if we go 25% of that, you're going to have 3 or 4 tags for the random drawing. So that's my thought process. I'd love to hear some of your comments and thoughts on this upcoming drawing, where you think there might be some of the best options for accessing maybe without an off-road vehicle, or maybe if you do have an off-road vehicle, which zone you think is the best to pursue after. Love to get your thoughts. Once again, this is Zach with Budget Hunter. Really appreciate you tuning in the video. Thanks.